I, I will formally present to all of us uh, Xiaoye Yang Fang. Xiaoye has been working in the intersection between performance studies, art, and criminology for quite a while. She has backgrounds in both areas, and she has been working in this intersection, particularly in China, but also more generally. She is a senior lecturer in criminology at the Montfort University, and she has recently published a very interesting article in Punishment and Society that was what in some way attract our attention to her work. So we invited her to present today in our series. As you all know, we are all the time trying to expand the boundaries of our discussions around punishment beyond, let's say, English speaking countries or the global north. And that's why for us it's very, very interesting to have Xiaoye here today. And she's doing a great effort because she's now in China and she's at 11 o'clock in the evening. So many, many thanks, Xiaoye, for accepting our invitation. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maximo and Richard, for the invitation. And good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. It's really great to have an international audience, and I really look forward to the question discussions later. In my presentation, there will be lots of references to, I mean, not lots, but some references to Latin American in terms of theater, both theater and prison studies. And I've been to Argentina 3 times, so and understand a little bit. And yeah, it's very interesting to compare always. So let me just share my screen. Can you see it well? Yeah?
Yes, but if you want, you can. That's it. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool. Let me just try to minimize the other windows. And let me know if you have any questions or problems during. Okay, so I'm gonna start. So today's half an hour share of my research is obviously only part of my research, which will be centered on prison theater in China, which will be published next year as a monograph. And I'm focusing today under the invitation on governance and participation in Chinese prison from the perspective of understanding how performances are organized in China. First of all, so my master's degree was in applied theater, a concept that's not that popular. Basically, it means socially engaged theater or participatory theater, where you work either with professional or non-professional actors and community members to create a variety of performances, usually involving topics and themes that are of concern to that community. And usually those communities are marginalized or with limited voices themselves. So it's often socially, politically engaged as well. And during my master's study at Goldsmiths, one of the themes was prison theater or arts theater in criminal justice more broadly. And I was very drawn to the topic and basically decided to work in this area ever since. Of course, because of COVID, I've not had access to prisons since 2020 in China. very limited access. So today's talk is based on my previous, mostly 2 research experiences, 2 projects. The first one, here comes the Latin American link, forum theater, theater of the oppressed by Augustin Boal from Brazil was an important part of our applied theater study journey at Goldsmiths, or any applied theater practitioners across the world would know forum theater. Probably some in the audience will be familiar as well. So that's what I did for my first project in a male prison in north of China in 2014. I was facilitating and researching, so it's a practice led or practice-based research, which was a common method in the arts, not really acceptable in criminology, but that's what I did for my master's. And the second project was my PhD project. I studied at City University of Hong Kong, criminology, and it was a drama club project in collaboration with a professional stage actor who invited me to be part of the project. So I was involved for a couple of years in that project. And I present theater in Chinese prisons as a institutionalized phenomenon, not just a one-off thing. And I discovered it by failing to do what I was planning on hoping to do. So, like lots of people who have cross-cultural study experience or work experience, when you see something that you don't, perhaps that you don't have in your own country, or you think that you don't have in your own country, you're like, this is great. I'm gonna do this. Gonna bring it home. I'm gonna do it at home. And then you realize that first, it's really hard. You're probably failing. And second, you're discovering a new landscape that you would not have found out if you didn't try to so-called intervene. So it wasn't until I've tried to practice and research and practice applied participatory theater in the more, let's say, Western sense or mature democratic sense, that I've discovered that there is a existing landscape of theater within Chinese prisons. It's just not what we understand as applied theater. And there's no existing literature on performance making in Chinese prison. There are records of it easily, usually in 2 places, one in memoirs, often written by political prisoners, recalling their activities, especially the cultural involvement, being plays, etc. And it spans decades in contemporary Chinese history, or more commonly seen in official propagandas, which most of the photographs I include today in the presentation are from official social media channels themselves. But there is no systematic ethnographic or fieldwork-based study unpicking the logic, the mechanism, and the motivations of why there's a systematic scale of performance making in Chinese prisons. So that's what I was trying to do with my book. So the title of this talk and my book is The Rule of Wonder, of course, in reference to the rule of law. And wonder here is from a slogan that I saw inside one of the prisons I worked in, and it's carved on a stone, kind of a rockery, similar to this picture I found. This picture is not from prison. I couldn't find one exactly the same, but it's very similar. And on that stone, this slogan was carved on it, turning the decayed into the wondrous. 化腐朽为神奇, slightly different from the picture, but very similar. And it's a very commonly known saying in Chinese, turning the decayed into the wondrous. And I'm using this because theoretically it points to two concepts that are key to understanding performance making in Chinese prison. One is the exemplarity. So turning the decayed, of course, in the context of criminal justice, refers to the criminalized, the ones that have sinned, the ones that have offended and incarcerated, turning the decayed into the wondrous. So not only that we're reforming them, we're rehabilitating them into law-abiding citizens, they also should be wondrous. So it is highly exemplary. It is not just a baseline kind of promise or motivation. It points to the ideal, the historical ideal of offender rehabilitation in China, which I don't have time to go into today, but there are several books on this by historians as well. And the second point is performativity. So it needs to be representation, right? If it's not being, if you can't see it, if it can't be witnessed, demonstrated, performed, it cannot be wondrous if no one sees it. So wondrous points to the fact that it has to be performed and seen. And this is central to my findings, and always recommend this research to anyone that's interested in understanding China, the exemplary society. So for me, I see myself as a not just a criminologist, but more of a China studies scholar. I'm just looking at China through the lens of punishment and reform. So Bakken argued China is a society where human quality based on the exemplary norm and its exemplary behavior is regarded as a force for realizing a modern society of perfect order, both educative and disciplinary. A recent example of that could be during COVID, the official goal for pandemic control was zero COVID. So not only they want to contain it, their goal was to have none at all. So, and that's a perfect demonstration of the exemplary thinking. And again, it's very deeply rooted in history and thoughts that I can't go into too much. And prison in China have to be seen in terms of defending the social and moral order in society in the throes of rapid transformation. We all know that China's been developing really rapidly without having gone through the Industrial Revolution. And punishment is a super important way of order maintenance, of molding and creating these narratives of morality, of the effort that legitimizes government to maintain such order. time is flying. I'm gonna speed up. This is just a bit of a context. So the officer-prisoner ratio in China is actually really high, I guess, high, low. I don't know which one it is, but it's roughly, I mean, one officer for 10 prisoners. Internationally, that's not a lot, right? It's roughly 4-1 in both US and the UK, as far as I found. So the question is, what is participatory prison governance within a highly authoritarian climate? How is it possible that I'm calling it participatory when it's highly authoritarian? And how are they able to maintain control with such a ratio of officer-prisoner? And by the way, I saw one of Maximo's talk. He was saying Argentinian prison officers, part of the police force. It's the same in China as well. So just quickly going through a few, just get a sense of how military style incarceration life is like if you were being admitted to the Chinese prison. So there is a lot of rules, there's lots of formalities, there are ways that you need to behave in all parts of the day. When you're sleeping, for example, you cannot cover your head with a duvet for security reasons. In this picture in the middle, this circular one, this person appears to be looking outside the window at the moon, which is very poetic, but it's not allowed. And actually, I've been told if you go near the window during sleep hours, it will trigger the alarm. Again, security risk. So a lot of rules and controls. And when so when I enter the prison to do field work or activities, the prisoners would walk in formation. And when they see a visitor, they're not allowed to look at me straight in the face. And etc. And the general model of Chinese prison is 5 days of work, 1 day of educational content, classes, trainings, etc., and 1 day off. Basically, that's the weekly schedule. So, getting to the main part of performance making. For the outsider, especially the pictures of really like semi-military style of prison life you've seen, and you've probably seen some documentaries of Japanese prison looking like similar kind of really strict lifestyle. You would think that it is unified in terms of control, but it's really not. I always feel like Chinese prison is like a black hole. It's really deep, it's not transparent, and there is so much beyond the gaze you don't see. So here I'm only seeing in terms of performance making because that's what I can access, and already you can see a variety in terms of performance of control and of presentation. So there's 3 types. There's a grand performance, which involves the whole prison. So thousands of people will be gathered in the same physical space and involves lots of prep. And city prison leadership will be invited to come to the prison to see the show, as well as certain media and civic partners. And there is the mid-range performances. There are competitions, usually performances in the form of competitions between units. Sometimes here I use wings because that's more internationally used. We call them units, so basically they're wings. So there are competitions between prison wings, and they're significantly smaller, but it is a prison-wide organized event as well. And there's really small perform shows within each wing that's not open to public. Definitely no leadership comes to see it. It's just for within their wings. So I've gathered some pictures. Again, like I said, I didn't take any of the pictures. They're released by official channels. Because in the age of social media, prisons are trying to get involved as well. So they are releasing lots of materials for us to use. So usually wing level performances are during traditional festivals. So, for example, the Mooncake Festival, like Mid-Autumn Festival, Spring Festival is definitely the biggest. It's like Christmas. And that's when within the unit they would put on shows, mostly performed by prisoners. And I'm just going through different aspects of participation, as that's the focus today, on different levels of shows. So why would they take part? How are they mobilized? They could be given small gifts, but more commonly, they are involved because it is fun. There's no theme to it. There's no prescribed narrative. They don't need to, it's just festive fun. So it's a lot more freeing than the other two types of performances. At the end, the rewarding section, I call it like a carnival-like. So in Bakhtin, which is a performance theorist, he proposed the concept of carnival, which means that it's a temporal subversion of power dynamics. So I was invited to one of those Spring Festival shows in a unit, and I was very shocked. They were making sexual jokes on the stage, and they were making fun of their officers, and all of it was fine. And I've never seen anything like that in such a tightly organized prison life. But as soon as the show finished, everyone resumed to their serious faces. And of course, no disrespect could be tolerated. But during those internal shows in the unit, there is freedom, there's liberation for sure. And you just rehearse on your own. And yeah, even the prison leadership, like the warden or whatever, they don't come to see it at all. So for the other two types, there are prison level performances. There is always this this hierarchy of organization. First, the event would have been promoted or sanctioned by the prison level leadership, and then it goes to the education and reform section, and then it goes to each unit, and then it goes to prisoner participants who actually makes it happen. So it's very hierarchical. It's a top-down mobilization process, and there's lots of institutional incentives involved. In literature on Chinese governance, there's this concept administrative subcontracting, and you see that in prison as well. So these are some pictures from the mid-range inter-wing small competitions. These are usually themed. So a common theme would be about rehabilitation. So demonstrating how you have repented, for example, since you came to prison. So a common trope would be a prisoner who's unhappy about their verdict, or they feel resentful to society, etc. And since them being in prison and being educated, they've transformed and changed their mind, and they not repenting. So there's always a theme, and usually the theme is kind of semi-official. It has to have a positive energy, as is a popular term in China. And it's usually kind of a speech or a skit. And here you already see the start of utilizing officer-prisoner relationship to mobilize participation. Because remember, they have to work 5 days a week. So rehearsing for performances is rarely their preferred ways to spend their leisure time. Of course, there are some of them that are have always been interested in being on stage, etc. But from my research, that's not that common. Usually, it requires mobilization, and officers would provide quite a bit of assistance. For example, lots of performances nowadays has multimedia background. So there's videos, there's music, there's all that accompanies a performance, so that they're more likely to win. And all these multimedia sources, of course, would have to be obtained by officers to be integrated into the performances. And one of the most important rewards, as I've discovered, is so-called get out of jail free card, and which I'll explain with this quote from, oh, actually, this is not about that. I'll have another quote, but this quote is from an officer about mobilizing his prisoners on the wing to take part. Legal points is something that's used less. It still exists. We have similar system in the UK as well. The accumulation, you can accumulate points in different ways, and it's linked to rewards and punishment system. You get more access, more time with family calls, visits, etc. But it's used more and more strictly now. So bottles of chili sauces is often all you get. But as we all know, it's an environment of deprivation. So sometimes that's all it takes, or some coffee. And now we come to the grand performance, which is institutional level performance and also prescribed themes given to the wings to make their own creations under. And these themes are 90% political themes, political related themes. For example, the ones I've been witnessing or involved in, anniversaries of the Red Army of China, or anniversaries of the reform and opening up of China, the marketization of China, or themes from Confucius, traditional Chinese moral teachings. So these are kind of prescribed themes for the grand performances. The grand performances are also made up from contributions from each wing, and usually there is a competitive element to it as well. And you can see the production is much more professional. There's lighting, there's sometimes fake snow, there's lots of projection, costume, makeup, all of that. And they're mobilized by previously mentioned rewards. So I talked about the get out of jail free card. In academic sense, it means a patronage network. So they benefit by complying to officers who want them to contribute to the performances, which kind of earned them a favor in the officer's eye. So it's considered by everyone as a task rather than rehabilitation. So it's something required of them. And officers have to work with the prisoners to fulfill official requirements. So what you've helped me to do this, next time you're in trouble, I might be able to do something about that. So it's a patronage network, which is not uncommon in many prisons across the world. And like I said, it's a huge performance. Every single person in the prison will be present to see the show, and it will be reported. And the prison, as a unit, as an organization, is likely to receive its own reward from their leadership. So from their provincial or city bureau level. So there's incentives and there's resource distribution all around, trickling down from the top to the individual prisoners themselves. Here is a interview quote with one of the ex-prisoners who was in our club, in our project. If I do a speech contest with Officer G, who's responsible for and get a prize, he will be happy about it. And other officers will think that this guy does things for Officer G. So if I've made a mistake and they wanted to sanction me, they will give face to Officer G. Basically, I'm Officer G's guy, and you must look at who is the owner before you beat a dog. So clear demonstration of the contribution to, I guess, social capital, right, to the patronage network they're trying to foster. So some conclusions. The process of signing, motivating, mobilizing, and producing performances inside is one of the institutionalized pathway. Of course, performance making is just a small part of prison organizational life in China, but it is one of the pathways to sustain and consolidate a variety of institutional orders. For example, how it's hierarchical organized, how resources are distributed, how rewards are distributed. Participation in prison's performative activities are foremost a compliance towards the prison order, which prisoners and officers are motivated by a mixture of incentives and disincentives. There are distinct incentives as well that not mentioned today. And the prison authority put a great deal of burden on effective control and contribution on officers themselves. But they do get discretionary power, for example, rewarding material goods and even, some discretionary power when there's dispute to be settled. It might not be a perfect exemplary society they're creating. I've not included, but once there was a collective complaint from the officers about how things are arranged, and the management had to change things. But it is very effective in preventing collective refusal of compliance. And just a few comments on comparing, because today is in dialogue with some colleagues from Spain and Latin America. I've not written specifically to compare, but of course I've read some literature on a variety of governance models across the globe, and I'm just conceptualizing co-governance models in South America, North America, maybe some other context, as there's a possibility for horizontal alternative power structures. For example, how there's a book about gangs in LA, I think by lost it for a moment. But so horizontal organizations of power is possible. But the Chinese model, participatory control, social control, I've called it, is vertical. There is no way for horizontal alternative power structures to emerge. There is a strict and effective vertical control and resource distribution, but it is very effective and works really hard at utilizing prisoner input in a variety of ways. So I find Ben Cruz's concept of tightness or institutional grip more useful or closer to the logic of explaining the different types of governance compared to co-governance or other models. But of course, Crew is mostly focusing on UK context. So again, there is space to expand the discussion. So basically, engineering participation, referring back to my starting point of participatory art, clearly it departs hugely from the original democratic sense of participation. But at the same time, it is not coercion either. So through institutional ways of maintaining participation, the desired order is therefore maintained. I hope that was not too fast. I'm aware of time, and I hope that's kind of clear. And thank you, and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.